Hey, everybody, what's going on? Welcome to the Random Redshirt podcast. I am one of the hosts, Zach, and the other host is Chris. What's up, buddy? Long time
Hello,
no see, talk,
hello,
and be on here.
hello, Zach, my dear friend. Great to see you. Great to be here. Hello, everyone on the interwebs and around the world and in Antarctica. It has been a while. We've been in a time vortex. I've been in a time vortex. It's weird, but our professional lives consumed us for a little bit, but we are so happy to be back.
Yeah, travel.
Hmm.
My family and I moved. If you have watched us on YouTube long enough, my background looks a little bit
Ah,
different. Some stuff is kind of similar. This shelf thing is similar if you're watching us.
yeah.
But better lighting, and yeah, we've moved, and so it's good to finally sit down with you and chat. I mean, I have missed our talks and our recordings, and this is a chance we have to just kind of let the other stuff go for a while and talk about stuff that we love and enjoy.
Yeah, indeed. I have missed you too. And congratulations and warm blessings on like, your new home. That is like wonderful. And that's going to be wonderful for you and your family. So it's going to be outstanding, my friend. Yeah.
Yeah, appreciate it.
Yeah.
It's a whole new ball game. It's a whole new
Yeah.
start, new job, new lots of everything. And so we're excited for the new adventure and everything and looking forward to it. And I am looking forward to getting back into the podcast. And I know
Yes.
we've been gone for a couple months. And for those of you who watch and listen to us all over the globe and the interwebs, we very much appreciate it. And thank you for waiting out and sticking around. We did not go anywhere. Our podcast did not end. We
Right.
still have so much stuff to talk about, and you know, I don't think we have any intention of stopping this anytime soon. I think we've thought about this before, Chris. I think mentally we need
Yeah.
it.
We absolutely do. Yeah, it is just such a great part of our lives to be able to do this, to share it with the people that listen to us. And we love hearing the inputs and feedback and suggestions that people have for ideas. And yeah, sometimes our professional lives get in our way for a while, and then we've got to go, we've got to go be consumed by that. So just thank you for your patience, like as we went through this. And yeah.
I mean, yeah, and it'd be great if this was our professional job. I mean, anybody out there who's got a boatload of cash wants to throw it our way that we can quit our jobs and just do this, but that's probably not going to happen anytime soon or ever. So in that case, we will continue our professional jobs and do this as something that we enjoy, and we love sharing our stuff with you, and
Mhm.
our passions and the things we enjoy talking about. If this is your first time watching or listening to us, welcome to the Random Redshirt podcast. We're a couple of nerdy guys who love talking about all things nerdy, Star Trek, Star Wars, everything in between. And once again, we're back with something in between. In fact, I
Mhm.
believe, Chris, the last time we recorded, we did do one of our Spotlight series episodes of the Gamesters of Triskelion, the original
Yes.
series Star Trek episode. But before that, we talked about the Terminator franchise and artificial intelligence, and that was a lot of fun and well, kind of scary too.
Yeah, yeah. Oh, well, yeah, and we'll get into it like artificial intelligence. It will definitely connect like very, very relevantly to what we'll talk about today. So that's
For
kind of
sure.
interesting. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, for sure. And
Amazing.
this so today on this episode we're going to talk about Battlestar Galactica, in particular the reboot miniseries that came out back in December 8th, 2003 is when the miniseries premiered on the Sci-Fi Channel, back when the Sci-Fi Channel actually played science fiction stuff versus all the garbage crap they play now. But this series, this franchise has a special place in my heart. I think I've talked to you about this before. Very fond memories of watching this with a couple buddies of mine when I used to live in North Dakota, and they would come over and we would watch the newest episode all the way up to the finale. I joined started watching Battlestar Galactica somewhat late. I think I started watching it either I think I want to say at some point in season two, late
Hmm.
season two, early season three, and then I caught I want to say maybe it was season two because I think only the first season was out, and I went out and bought it on DVD, and I was in college and I was watching it, and then I started watching it, caught up, and then would watch all the newest episodes. And then my buddies, I think it was season four, we watched all the new episodes when they came out, and then the series finale. So definitely a warm place in my heart for this franchise, in particular the reboot. because some great memories from it.
Oh, that's awesome, man. I would say if it wasn't for you, my friend, I would not have gone back and watched this refresh or reboot. Because like as I grew up, and when I was growing up, I'd watch the reruns of the original Battlestar Galactica, so that was
Yep.
always like in my mind, and I had familiarity with the characters there and the Cylons and Starbuck and Apollo, so I had that kind of vision in my mind. I remember when it came out, I wanted to like it. I definitely wanted to see it. I was like so excited on this refresh of Battlestar Galactica. Like, and as you know, as I've told you, so I watched it, and then I couldn't. It was interesting for me, and this is just like very particular to me. I couldn't get past the camera work and the cinematography and the movement of the camera, and it just started to get like actually give me some motion sickness, and I couldn't see it. And then there was a change in the characters. And I remember I did kind of halfway watch that first like miniseries, but I came away and I was like, I can't watch it. I can't watch it. And I felt like really like disappointed or upset. And then things had changed. And I came away like really feeling like this negative feeling. And I never kind of went back and watched it
Hmm.
like anything, didn't really watch any of the series or the seasons when they were on. Um, and so when we started talking, and then you were really started encouraging me to like say, "Hey, check out Battlestar Galactica, the reboot." So I finally did, and it was like really recently, like just the last few months, and I finally put back on the miniseries from 2003 and like watched that, and it was I was kind of watching it with like a different frame of mind, giving it a fresh chance, just taking it like slow and seeing if I could get past the camera work. And wow, it's been great. I know I've been texting you like to show you like how much I really like it, because I really, really like it. There's so many levels um and depth in character, themes, story. It's just been fantastic to see. I'm not even all the way through it. So I think I'm in season 3, maybe at the beginning of season 3. But after I got past that first like miniseries, it's like, oh, this is great. I want to continue watching it. And so I've just been like watching it when I can and being really excited. I'm 20 years late to this.
Better late than never,
Yeah,
though.
yeah, but yeah, absolutely better late than never. And I'm just really glad that I could get into this. And thank you for continuing to encourage me to watch it, because I love it. I
It's
indeed
it's
love it.
such a wonderful series. It really
Yeah.
is. And in this particular episode of the Random Retro podcast, we're going to focus specifically on the mini series only. We're not. Maybe we'll get into talking about the rest of the actual series another time. But for now, we're just going to focus on the mini series because the mini series really sets up, obviously, the rest of the show. And it's very interesting the way that they did the Battlestar Galactica reboot. Right, this was a 3 hour television miniseries that was really over about 4 hours of actual broadcast time. You had to factor in all of the commercials and everything else, right? And they bring in a really talented veteran actor named Edward James Olmos, who we all love and adore. I know I absolutely love this man. And Mary McDonnell, who we had seen in Independence Day as the president's wife, and she's been in a million things. To be kind of the two main leads, and there's several leads in this, but kind of the two top ones. But also, one of the big things here is if you're a Star Trek fan and you've never seen Battlestar Galactica the reboot, I call it the reboot because it or refresh, whatever you want to call it, because there was an original Battlestar Galactica back in was the 70s and 80s.
Mhm.
Um, the principal writer and showrunner for Battlestar Galactica is none other than Ron D. Moore, who got his start writing on Star Trek: The Next Generation. And so, if you look at the series as a whole, which we're not going to today, but if you look at the series as a whole, you'll realize the type of writing that you see in Star Trek carries into Battlestar Galactica. I think the writing was incredible. In fact, I loved Battlestar Galactica so much when I was in college. I actually wrote a paper with Battlestar Galactica as my subject or my example because I was writing a paper on monotheism and or not no no. I was writing a paper on religious themes in science fiction, how science fiction tends to lend itself to a lot of religious themes and implications. And I use the idea of monotheism versus polytheism, which is multiple gods versus single god, which is very evident in Battlestar Galactica, and you see, and we'll talk about that at some point. But it's a wonderful series, and so with Ron D. Moore at the helm, you knew okay, this is probably gonna be pretty good, right? And so this mini series is the first part of this reimagining or remaking of Battlestar Galactica, which was based on the '78 television series. And really, this was kind of like the pilot for Battlestar back in 2003, end of
Hmm.
2003, because then the first season or the beginning of the actual series starts in 2004. So I find it very interesting because you look at the mini series, right? The mini series goes off and people aren't really a fan of it, doesn't do well. I guess maybe they don't make the series, right? But this is kind of their opportunity to say,
Mm-hmm.
hey, let's make this little mini series, see if it works, and then if it's popular enough, maybe you know, we'll make a show out of it. I mean, I know we're not talking about the series as a whole, but the actual series only went 4 seasons,
Hmm.
right? So you don't actually have that much more to watch. You're already well over halfway. But they could have gone on a lot longer than 4 seasons, I think. And if you're as you're watching the show, Chris, you're probably realizing, man, only 4 seasons. But my understanding was is that Ron Moore wanted to make sure this show went off on a high note and didn't want
Mm.
to drag it on and on and on and go, too long to where it just gets repetitive or stale or whatever, which, you know, this series, okay, you have people running from robots. It could get old after a while, right? If it's
Hmm.
kind of repetitive. So the fact that they ended it the way they did, I think was pretty spot on.
That's cool. I'm looking forward to seeing how they ended it, and looking forward to the rest of the season, like three and beginning of season four, and how it goes. I kid you not. I think there were times in like either season one or season two, there were things that happened, and we won't get into it, but just my reaction, where I just I exclaimed, I like screamed, I was like what just happened? Like I just is great seeing this like for the first time.
This show definitely will keep you on your toes. It will keep you
Hmm.
guessing. I do not believe in any way, shape, or form that this show is like super predictable. We're like, oh yeah, I saw that coming. I knew that was going to happen. There may be certain things where you're like, okay, yeah, that didn't surprise me that much. But then there are other things where you're like, oh, okay, yep,
Yeah.
didn't see that coming. And I remember many of those moments watching it the first time. But yeah, let's jump into this, Chris. Let's go ahead and kind of like we've done when we've gone over new series or things like that. We're gonna just kind of talk about some of these main characters that we're gonna get to know in the mini series, and then down the road, if we broach the rest of the series as a whole, at some point we can talk about them again. Really quickly though, I did want to mention before we jump into this because I
Yeah.
don't want to not discuss it, but there's a lot going on these next couple weeks in the world of nerddom or geekdom or whatever you want to call it. San Diego Comic Con has been going on,
Hmm.
um, and at the time of this recording, and will end tomorrow. The Star Trek convention is going to be going on again. Time of this recording next weekend. The National Sports Card Convention is in Ohio this year. That's going on, but they have non-sport stuff there too. We got a teaser trailer drop for the Section 31 movie that they're making.
Oh yeah,
I don't know.
yeah.
I don't know how I feel about that. And then we also got a sneak peek into a clip from season 3 of Star Trek Strange New Worlds, which I laughed hysterically at. So there's a lot out there right now. And I know
Yeah.
Deadpool and Wolverine's coming is out. I mean,
Is out. Yeah.
there's a lot of stuff going on right now.
Yeah, it's right. That sneak peek of season three, Strange New Worlds. Thank you for sharing that with me. I thought that was super funny. It felt like a Saturday Night Live sketch, and it played, they're deadpan serious, but like it's funny. So if folks have not seen it, like please, like you should see it. Go out onto the YouTube and check that out. Section 31.
It's all over
Oh, it's
Paramount
all
and Star
over.
Trek social media
Okay.
pages. Yeah. So if you're following one of them, hopefully you'll see it and go watch it.
Excellent. Excellent. The Section 31, I think we felt similarly. I felt it like reminded me of a J.J. Abrams action movie, maybe. So like that's how I felt. I go, oh, it felt
It,
very J.J. Abrams-esque. We'll
yeah,
see.
it didn't feel like Star Trek to me that
Mm-hmm.
much. Honestly, it just I don't know, it felt really weird. So I don't know. I mean, I'll watch it. I'll give it a shot and see. You know, I mean, sometimes as we've learned from things like the Star Wars Han Solo movie, the Solo movie, right? That as Mr. Miyagi would say, not everything is as seemed, Daniel-san, right?
That's right.
So, you know, maybe it'll be good. But the teaser trailer, I was like, I'm not so sure about. But really quickly, I was thinking about this
Yeah.
too, Chris.
Yeah, yeah.
So this weekend, the last couple, well, I've been off this week from work. My wife's been doing some training for her new job, so I was home with the
Nice.
kids since they're not back in school yet. And I I I found a used copy, and I'd already seen the first movie, but I don't think I'd seen movie 2 and 3 all the way through. So I watched the second part 2 or movie number 2 and then movie number 3 all the way through, and that was the Beverly Hills Cop movies.
Interesting.
Those were a ton of fun. I
Nice.
really I have not seen the new Axel Foley Beverly Hills Cop movie on Netflix yet, but those were a ton of fun to watch. The Beverly Hills Cop 3 was not super
Yeah,
great, but 1 and 2 were fantastic movies. Absolutely loved them.
it's cool. Oh,
Yeah.
it's cool.
So
I'm
anyway,
glad
sorry
you
that
you
all
like
that
it.
stuff
No, no.
just this kind of like flood of stuff that's in my head since we haven't been on here to chat with all of you in
Yeah.
quite a while. So, anyways, let's dive into this, Chris. Let's jump
Yeah.
in and let's go ahead and meet our main cast for the miniseries.
Absolutely. So one of our main person, Edward James Olmos, that plays Commander William Bill Adama. And he is, as everyone knows, he's the commander of the Battlestar Galactica. And man, I don't know how about you, but I feel like he was terrific. He's just terrific. He's just got this calm presence as a leader. Um, he's serious. Like I think he just does a fantastic job embodying kind of that personality of Commander Adama. And he's just got all this experience, calmness. And he has this in the miniseries, he had this one line that I loved. This one really stood out to me. And this is when he was talking to Colonel Ty and they were having to troubleshoot a disaster on there. And they had to make a decision, right, to close off the decks, and that would like cause some people to perish. And his line to Colonel Ty was, "You're either the XO or you're not." A really short line, but so like effective for me. Like just hearing that, and there's so much to that, to those like few words. I was like, wow, I like that a lot.
Yeah, he's really fantastic in this. I think his character of Commander Adama, you could absolutely do a leadership study on.
Mm-hmm.
You know, we did a collaboration, right, with the Where's Bev podcast and talked about some of the Star Trek captains. We have talked a lot about the leadership of many of the, or actually of all of the legacy captains of Star Trek, right? I think William Adama would be an unbelievable character study and leadership study after you finish the series because there's so much that you can talk about with the way in which he leads, the way in which he cares for his people and his son and Starbuck, who maybe shouldn't get the number of chances that he's given her, and so many other things, right? But you're right. He has that calming presence in the midst of a storm.
Absolutely does. And the crew respects him so much. Like you can tell by how they interact with him that there's just this great level of esteem, of respect, almost like adoration. I felt. And so when because Adama's there, and like during in the miniseries, like he's going through these crises where like at one point everyone thinks that Lee Adama, his son, has died, and and he's right in the middle of the bridge, and everyone's seeing that, and they're just looking at him, and he maintains his, he you could tell like how he feels, how hurt he is, but he maintains his calm, his presence, his demeanor, continues to give like the right command decisions for the moment, to protect the crew and to protect like all of their lives. It was amazing. I thought that scene was amazing.
And I think you're far enough into the series, and I don't want to keep diving into the series
Mm-hmm.
itself, because we're talking about the miniseries, but there is obviously throughout this miniseries, and we'll kind of go through the plot uh, of the miniseries here in a few minutes, but you notice when Lee comes aboard for the first time, and him and Commander Dumb are talking, and throughout the miniseries, and then even especially into the series, you see this. While yes, Adama's great at that even keel, still being that leadership presence, even though now he's heard that, like, it sounds like he thinks his son's died. That throughout most of his life, he maybe has put his career ahead of his family more than he should have. And I
Mm-hmm.
think you learn over time with his character the regret that maybe he has for some of those decisions he's made. But
Oh yeah.
regardless, though, he is a lot of people would break, right? They hear their child's killed. They would break, or they'd have to leave. He hears it, like you said, Chris, he sees it. You see it on his face, and then he takes kind of a breath and then says, okay, and then starts back to leading again, because everybody on that bridge is looking for him, or looking at
Mhm.
him to lead them. So good point you made.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. So that, he is contrasted, I think, really well by the president, Laura Roslin. Mary McDonnell plays Laura Roslin, and I don't know how you felt, but I felt like that contrast between them, because she's very, so she's president of the 12 colonies now that all of the successors and the actual president, they have perished in the attack from the Cylons, and now she's president. But she's very compassionate, very caring, wants to look after the people. You know, not that um, not that Commander Dama is not compassionate, but she's not a warrior. Like, she's just trying to take care of the well-being of like her people. So if she sees someone that needs to be rescued or taken care of, like, then her emotions and her heart go out, right? And she's going to do that. um Fascinating part about our character that we learn like right off is that she's dying, right? She has terminal cancer, and like that's one of the first things we learn about her. I actually, maybe that's how we're introduced to her character, actually, at the beginning.
Yeah, I think so. She's
Yeah.
in that office, right, or whatever.
Hmm.
And it's interesting too, because like you said, she wasn't the president originally. She was, I think, like this was like the Secretary of Education or something like
Yeah.
that. It's like she's way down the line of successors to the presidency.
Yeah.
So, and then, if you're just watching this miniseries for the first time and you've never seen the show, you know nothing about it, you might think, oh well, she's got terminal cancer. She's going to be a temporary president, but she's not going to make it into the show, right?
Yeah.
I don't want to give away too many spoilers for people. If you have not seen the series at all, I don't want to give too much away, because I don't want to spoil that for you and ruin it for you. I want you to watch the series fresh. But if you're going into it, you may think, well, she's not going to make it. She's got terminal cancer. How long could she actually be in the show, right?
Hmm.
And you figure that out as the show goes.
Yeah. Mary McDonnell does a great job. It's almost like she takes that information about Laura Roslin, because that kind of, in a way, gives Laura Roslin more resolve, right? She's got this terrible thing that's happening to her, tragedy of the silent attack. Um, she definitely, like, she's put in this circumstance, rises to the circumstance, and is not afraid to like challenge Adama at all. She's like, no, if she thinks he's wrong, she calls him out on it, and gives a contrary order. Said no. So
And
I
you
like
see
that.
that in the miniseries, right?
Yeah,
You see
yeah,
that
yeah.
contrary, and you're right. You are absolutely right when you say these two contrasting viewpoints, because she comes from the civilian side,
Hmm.
Adama comes from the militaristic side, and they have very different viewpoints on the way things should be run. Especially because she was Secretary of Education, she's not been in really much of a political role. Uh, you know, she wasn't the president, so she has a much different outlook on things than he would from that military standpoint.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. One of your favorite characters is next, right? I think that is Katie Sackhoff that plays Starbuck. Yeah. And I think she does an amazing job. Like you have like the intro to Starbuck. I think she's jogging around uh the Galactica, and then one of the other intros is like she's playing poker against Colonel
Right.
Ty. And you just those like intros, you just get that feeling of like of who Starbuck is. Um and that's kind of neat. She's definitely got an attitude. Um and she's a hot shot pilot and she does great. And the character of Starbuck in the refresh is, a different gender. So the Starbuck in the original was a man, and then but there's similarities in both Starbucks. Both kind of swashbuckling, like I feel. Like I felt in the original. Um and I haven't seen the original like in a while, but I definitely feel like Starbuck was like uh, a swashbuckling kind of carefree attitude about him. Now, in the miniseries, in the refresh, you get a much deeper look at Starbuck and what's all behind that kind of maybe facade than you do in the original. So I think that's fascinating. And then Katie Sackhoff does like a great job of it.
Right. And I'm a
Yeah.
big Katie Sackhoff fan. Of course, for those of you who may not have seen the series, you may know her as Bo-Katan, both as the voice in the animated
Mm.
Clone Wars as well as the live action in Mandalorian. She is fantastic in this role. As much as I love her in her Star Wars roles, I think this is still her best role of anything she's played because the character is very complex, and you learn that throughout the miniseries and the series as a whole how complex the character is. You learn what her role is. You learn her involvement with the Adama family in the miniseries, and you learn that she's got a mouth on her. She's very, um, you know, disobedient. She causes a lot of trouble. She's a hot shot, like you said, um, and she is very insubordinate to higher ranking people, especially people she doesn't like. I think a lot of this covers up the fact that she is carrying around, and you learn this I think it's towards the end ish of the miniseries, that she's carrying around a massive amount of regret because of the role she played in um, Lee
Mm.
Adama's, that's Commander Adama's son, in the death of Lee's brother or Commander Adama's other son. And we'll talk about that later. But I think that she's a very, very complex character who goes through a lot, who's been through a lot, and you will see through the miniseries and then in the series itself the amount of development that they do with her character and where she ends up at the end of the series versus where she is in the miniseries and then everything in between. It's just a wonderful, wonderful. I mean, all these characters get such wonderful story arcs and character arcs. I think hers might be the best.
Yeah.
I really do. I think it's just really fantastic.
Yeah. And I don't I wonder who, you talked about Ron D. Moore coming from Star Trek and being part of the main creative team and writing this. I I'm really appreciative of that and the writers that put this thought into Starbuck, because she's carrying a lot of pain like with her, right? And so there's this facade that she has, um of being insubordinate, being a hotshot pilot, being carefree, but there's a tremendous amount of pain all behind that.
Right.
And like at one time she's getting ready to go fly out, like they're in the midst of the disaster and she's getting ready to fly out, and Lee Adama is right there, and she confesses to Lee at that time. She goes, hey, your brother wasn't ready for flight school, and I passed him. And he's like, why are you telling me this? And she's like, well, it's the end of the world. I'm confessing all my
Yeah.
sins. So
That was a powerful line
yeah.
because she thinks she's flying off into death. She
Yeah.
thinks everything, it's all, they're all going to die, right? So she has nothing to lose. And
Um,
it's
yeah.
really a very doom gloom kind of view from her character, and probably others feel the same way. They just don't necessarily voice it like she does.
Yeah. I, yeah, you're with Starbuck, man, there is so much behind her character. It is amazing. And Kitty Sackhoff does like a just a tremendous job with that. And I think
My
reflects
goal
that
is to
really
get
well.
her on our show one day. That would be amazing. I don't know if it'll happen, but she has her own podcast now.
Oh, cool.
So maybe. And I don't know, by the way, segue here. I will be in Chicago at the end of
Mhm.
October for the 20th anniversary Battlestar Galactica convention. If any of you make it out, please stop me and say hi. And hopefully, Chris, you'll also be able to make it out. That'd be wonderful. Obviously, to reunite again. But
Yeah.
then by that time, you'll probably have finished the show, and there'll be so much to talk about. And
Yeah.
meeting, there's so many of these actors are going to be there. In fact, almost all of them, and it's going to be incredible. So I'm so stoked to be talking about Battlestar right now, because in a few months I'm going to be there. So and hopefully you too.
Man, that'd be awesome, my friend. That's
Yeah.
awesome. That's so cool. That's so cool. Yeah. So, you're the next character we've got. You always hear about Starbuck and Apollo. So Apollo in this version is played by Jamie Bomber, if I'm saying that last name right. Right. I
Bamber, I
think
think is how you say
Bamber,
it. But
Jamie
yeah,
Bamber.
he's
Yeah.
British, by the way. He doesn't sound like it, but he in real life he's British. He's got a British
Oh, I
accent.
didn't even know that. Oh,
Yeah.
okay. Cool.
Yeah, you hear him
Yeah.
talk in real life and you're like, wait, come again? You don't sound anything like you did in Battlestar Galactica, because he got an American accent, I guess, for that. But yeah, he's
Oh,
British.
well, that's cool. I,
Yeah.
I learned something new. Yeah.
There you
So,
go.
yeah.
So I think it's pronounced Bamber, but could
Bamber,
be
yeah.
wrong.
Yeah. Cool. And in the original Apollo, in the original series, that was played by Richard Hatch. So it's cool because Richard Hatch, comes in the refresh. So I love those scenes where you have uh both Apollos. In my mind, I'm like, oh, both Apollos are in that same scene. So
Yep.
it's pretty cool. But yeah, Leah Lee here, I think, is played really well. I think all the characters are played really well, but you consider that Lee is Adama's son, or Bill Adama's son, and they have a very, their relationship, the father and son relationship is, very tense, right? So they've gone through some tragedy, personal tragedy in their life. Lee losing his brother, Commander Bill Adama losing his son, and so all of that and how that affects them. But you also feel like Lee. I mean, Lee Adama is the son of like a great commander, and so right, living up to those expectations. And Lee's, he's coming into it already very accomplished. He's a very accomplished pilot. He's a captain at the time. People really respect him. And then the media like loves to be able to see that commander and captain, father and son kind of relationship. But they're very tense at the moment with each other, and then he feels like you could sense that from a son. He plays that like, how am I supposed to feel like with my father? Does that love was is does is that love there from my father? Does like he appreciate me? Does am I good enough for him? Um, essentially, right? That core thing. Am I good enough for my father? I feel like he really played that excellently. I felt that in the miniseries, and then some of the episodes after hit me like so powerfully, like, oh, where he realizes how much like his father cares about him. Um, they do it subtly, but I think it is so powerful. So I like that. That's something that was not, or I didn't feel like it was in, or I don't remember that it was in the original. But this was just so great to see.
It really is. Apollo to me is also a character that's gone through a lot, obviously losing his brother, and he blames his father for that. Uh, Not knowing until, later in the miniseries that maybe Kara Thrace, or Starbuck, she goes by her call sign, maybe had a bigger role in that than his dad.
Yeah.
I would have to challenge you a little bit on the relationship, because I think, especially in the miniseries, they don't really have much of a relationship. You know what I mean? Like
Hmm.
it's tumultuous because they don't. you can tell that they don't talk much or at all, really, right? And that when Apollo first shows up on Galactica, he doesn't even go see his dad right away. It's not until he's kind of forced to go and stand there and dress uniform and take pictures and act all like they all chummy chum. But in reality, you just know that like they don't probably speak much. They don't have much of a relationship. So yes, absolutely tumultuous because there's not much relationship there, it would seem, at least as we're led on to believe. So
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. It's great. Um, yeah, we'll talk about it like when we talk about season one, some of those powerful moments between father and son that I really liked. But yeah, nice.
Apollo is another complex character. Well, I actually think all the characters in this show are complex. They're very, very complex in many ways. Apollo's complexity with Starbuck and with Adama, and without giving too much away, at some point, another character in the
Hmm.
show, female character in the show, and there's a lot going on. And Apollo has massive shoes to fill because of who his father is and massive expectations to live up to, as you kind of alluded to. He's dealing with a lot. And then to have to kind of become like the kind of lead guy in the pilot room, it's a lot. He's got a lot of weight on his shoulders.
Yeah, he's kind of thrust into that lead pilot pretty soon, like after the silent attacks. Um, and his father Lee, or sorry, his father like Bill Adama, Commander Adama. It's not like he has a lot of emotion, right? Like he doesn't, and Lee doesn't either in a way, like in the beginning because he's always in that maybe command lead, but when he does have emotion, it kind of violently comes out. Like
Yeah.
he'll be like super mad at Starbuck, right? And it you know, he just comes out like screaming at Starbuck, yelling at
Right.
Starbuck, or Starbuck's in jail, and he's like, "Oh, you're in jail again." He just
Yeah.
kind of has this kind of uh, when the emotions come out from Lee, like it's strong. So
Well,
that's
there's a phrase. Isn't there a phrase that's like too much is expected, much is asked, or is too much is asked, much is expected, or something like that.
mm,
And I feel like that really applies to Lee, really
mm,
applies to Apollo, right? If you
mm-hmm.
look at the circumstances he's in, both pre and post silent attack and everything else, there's a lot that's put on his shoulders and and such high expectations that he's another leadership character study that could be done on just him because there's just so much there to unpack. Really, the first four characters you've mentioned are, I know we spent a lot of time on these
uh,
first characters and some of the other ones maybe not as much time, but these first four characters are really significant in this series, and there's so much to them, and they're so intertwined. There's a lot going on. There's a lot going on with these characters.
Yeah, and then we'll explore it more in the series, but there is so much going on, and they they talk about that in the various episodes, right? Each of them, like Starbuck, um, or Lee, they have their vices, and they explore. They they've got they're not getting their needs met, like as an individual, like as a human being. You kind of see that, like escaping and finding vices or finding things that they shouldn't be doing. So that's fascinating, and the way they've written that.
And this series, I think, and with Ron D. Moore at the helm of this, and then he's at the helm of Outlander. These two series in
Mm.
particular mirror each other in this way, and that is that both Outlander, which I love, and Battlestar Galactica, which I love, explore deeply the depravity of humanity,
Mhm.
right? They get into such serious and significant and consequential scenarios, and you watch how that affects them. Many times it breaks them and they begin to do extreme things or morally questionable things or just downright awful things due to the extreme situation in which they're put into. And you probably have seen that already just through the first two seasons plus, and you'll see that even more in the last two seasons. You see that in Outlander almost every episode. But I like it in the sense that, not that I like the depravity of humanity, but I like it in the sense because I want to watch the reaction and response that a character does or has to a given scenario to see, are they really that depraved or are they redeemable? Right? Like, does the situation then completely change who they are, and now they become morally, I don't know, not deplorable is not the right word, but like morally bankrupt, morally void, or do they have morals that they stick to even when they're in tough situations? If any of that makes
Mhm.
sense.
Yeah, absolutely.
So I really enjoy when they explore that, because I like to see, I like to see the characters get knocked down, but then I also like to see when they have redemption arcs too to those situations. So just my 2 cents.
No, absolutely. And I'm curious if our next character that we're going to talk about, Dr. Gaius Baltar, played by James Callis, if there's a redemption to him. We'll see. I'm not that far into it, but his
You'll
character
find
like
out
is
one
fun.
way or the other.
Yeah.
Yeah, he's I would say, this is my own kind of opinion, Chris, and I'm curious on your thoughts on this. Do you think Dr. Gaius Baltar, played by James Callis, who I met last year at the convention, he's a wonderful guy, by the way, nothing like the character, obviously. Do you think that he's a bigger villain in this than the Cylons?
At the moment, I would have to say like no, not as a villain. I think he's this, and I think there are people like this like in the world, right? He's this he's very within himself. Like he's self-centered,
Very self-absorbed. Yeah.
very self-absorbed. He's brilliant, he's arrogant.
But I think his arrogance comes from the fact that everybody's telling him he's a genius, right? Like
Yeah.
he's doing these interviews and like, oh, the genius guy's Baltar and blah 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 and everything like that. I think he's a slimy weasel, honestly, and I think he's a bigger, I to me,
Yeah.
because we're talking about the miniseries, right?
Yeah.
In the miniseries, he's a bigger villain than the Cylons, and he's like, oh my gosh, how could you say that? That's sacrilege. That's that's not even true. But think about it, if Gaius Baltar doesn't lead with his pants, right? He's not thinking with that, and isn't having this relationship with this woman who he doesn't know is a Cylon, right? Played by Trisha Helfer. He doesn't give her the ability to get into the defense mainframe or whatever it is.
Yeah.
And then because they're able to infiltrate that, they're able to shut down all these new age Vipers. They're able to decimate the fleet. They're able to attack. The colonies really can't defend themselves because they have basically cracked the defensive abilities of the 12 colonies. If the Cylons couldn't do that and Baltar hadn't allowed that in, right, with this woman, quote unquote, the attacks may not have happened. I don't know.
They may
Just
not have happened. Yeah. Yeah.
something I thought about for a very, very long time from watching the show way back in the early 2000s when it was on. Uh, in the mini series, I won't say maybe for the whole regular series, but for the mini series, Baltar to me is the bigger villain than the Cylons,
Mm.
because he be unbeknownst to him, because he doesn't know, but that ignorance is not an excuse in this case.
Mm-hmm.
It He literally trades state secrets, right, and the ability to get into the defensive systems for this quote unquote this physical relationship with this woman. She
Yeah.
tricks him, she woos him, whatever, it doesn't matter. He's weak, and he does this, and he literally betrays mankind. So I
And
think
he's
he's in the miniseries. I think he's a bigger villain than the Cylons.
yeah, and he's carrying that with him. That kind of knowledge that oh, he's it's kind of interesting the way he plays it. He's carrying that with him, but it's almost like he's just more afraid that he'll get found out. That's
Exactly. Yes.
right. That's what he's more afraid of, that people will find out that he did it. Not necessarily that I mean, he feels guilty, but not necessarily that he really, really feels guilty, guilty, guilty. It's more like, oh, they'll find out that he did it.
It's yeah, it's not so much that he cares that he did it, although I think he does. I do think he cares that
Mhm.
his actions are what resulted in the attacks. Once the kind of light bulb goes off and he goes, "Oh my gosh," like almost like that, "What have I done?" But you're right. He doesn't want people to find out because he knows if people find out, he's gonna get probably maybe executed, right? He could get
Yeah.
the death penalty, whatever, right? Or at least imprisoned or whatever. Um, but he's very much, and you see it throughout the whole miniseries, he's very much a survivalist in the sense that he will do and step on whatever he needs to do to save himself. He's very, as you mentioned, self-absorbed,
Hmm.
and he's gonna do whatever it takes to save Gaius Baltar, to save his own skin. Nothing else matters. Just him saving his own skin. You see one little moment, which we can talk about later, where he doesn't do that. Probably because of the guilt that he's carrying in his head that only he knows. But well, and the Cylon that he had the relationship with. But um yeah, he's yeah, that's gonna be an interesting character to discuss.
Yeah, absolutely. Lots of layers with Dr. Gaius Baltar.
Hmm.
Which brings us to the Cylon that he has the relationship with, number 6, played by Trisha Helfer. So she does
Yeah.
like a fantastic job. I think um she's she's beautiful. She just does a great job, like with the seduction of Bal Baltar, and plays with his mind like all the time. And so I thought it was pretty clever, like what they did with he being the only one that can see her because she's in his mind. Um, and it's kind of there's a lot of comical moments where he's reacting or talking to her. He's the only one that can see her, and then people around him are just like wondering, "Man, this guy's just like he's just so weird."
Crazy.
Walter's
Well,
like crazy.
he's
Yeah,
eccentric, right? Because he's
he's
a genius, so he's
yeah, yeah.
eccentric, right? Yeah, yeah.
Uh,
She was really great. Um, and when you first meet the character in the miniseries, you don't know she's a Cylon, right? She's just this beautiful woman who's having a relationship with this guy, and then you start learning that, oh, well, now she's getting defense secrets from him, and then he kind of alludes to, well, for your company or whatever it is, like basically
mhm.
makes you think she's some kind of contractor that's trying to get a leg up to win some kind of defense contract. And it's not till a little bit later in the miniseries where you learn that, oh no, she's a Cylon, and the humans don't know. They don't even know. I don't even think they know until after the attacks that Cylon, in fact, I know, yeah, in the miniseries, they talk about it. They don't even know until after all the attacks have happened. They're trying to figure out what's going on,
Mhm.
that Cylons can actually look like humans,
Right, right. They learn
right?
that
And
later.
so, and then that's when all of the suspicion begins to happen because they're like, well, any one of us could be a Cylon and we wouldn't even know it.
Yeah,
You know what I mean? Or anyone, we wouldn't even know who's a Cylon because any one of us could be one.
yeah,
So, and that's when Dr. Baltar that has to develop the blood test to try to test for the Cylons and everything like that, and yada yada yada. But yeah, we don't know in the beginning that she's a Cylon.
yeah. That's right. I mean, we find out that the Cylons can look like humans, or I should say the fleets finds out. I think that was when uh they were docked at Ragnar, like they're in that base looking for the
Yeah,
ammunition base, and so Commander Adama like meets that other Cylon that's there, and then eventually realizes, oh man, this guy's a Cylon because
yep,
tries to kill him. So yep, that's when we learn.
yeah, yeah. And there's several there's a ton of characters we could really talk a lot about. Chris, I know
Hmm.
there's uh yeah, there's quite a few.
Yeah.
There, I'm looking at the list of them
No,
here, and
it's
there's
all
quite a
good. There's
few.
a lot. Yeah.
Yeah, but I mean, some of the bigger ones, right? You have Grace Park, who played Lieutenant JG, Sharon Valeri, call sign Boomer.
Yeah.
And we learn at the very end of the miniseries that she's a Cylon, but she's a Raptor pilot, which is a different ship than the Vipers. Um, and we learn quite a few other characters as well that are
I-
important.
yeah, I will say to speak on Grace Park just and Sharon, because in the miniseries, right, she plays that character, and then in the series, like she's back in the series, but it fascinates me. They do such a great job because she has to play several different versions, like of a Cylon at different like points of that particular Cylon's perspective,
Yeah,
and they pull it off
right.
really, really greatly.
Now there's another character too that I think is incredibly complex and has a really bad vice
Mm.
and
Uh,
is very important, but that's Colonel
yeah.
Saul Ty, played by Michael Hogan, who apparently in real life has had some pretty significant, challenging health issues the last couple of years. And he's that XO of the Battlestar Galactica, and he's a character who I found myself really despising in the beginning, and then once you realize kind of some of the troubles at home and everything else, it starts to paint the picture that okay, maybe this guy isn't so much a bad guy, but his vice is what makes him pretty rough.
Yeah, that is very well said. Absolutely. You can tell that he has this great respect, great loyalty to Adama, right?
Right.
So you can absolutely tell that. Um, and vice versa, you can tell that Adama like has this appreciation of Colonel Ty. Colonel Ty's is like Adama's like number one guy, and Adama trusts him. Um, so that's I do like Colonel Ty like a lot. Like despite the crew not respecting him, because he knows the crew doesn't respect him, he still does the best he can for Adama and the rest of the ship.
Yeah,
So
he's
he's
doing
he's
his best.
complex. Yeah,
He's doing what he does because of his loyalty to Adama, right?
yeah,
Not necessarily because he knows he's some. I think he even knows he's not a good leader. I think he knows that.
yeah.
I think he knows he has his challenges, he has his issues, and he's trying to work through them as much as he can, albeit he's not very good at it. But I mean, I
Yeah,
mean, for real. I mean,
yeah.
he's a huge drunk, and that affects significantly the way he interacts with the crew. And I know where you're at in the show. You probably, and we won't talk about the series right now, but like you probably have different thoughts about Colonel Ty than maybe you would have had you only watched the miniseries. Because if you only watch the miniseries, you think, oh, Colonel Ty, he's a piece of crap. Like he's garbage, And that's kind of what I thought when I first saw the miniseries. I'm like, man, this guy's awful. Why would Adama, who seems like such a good leader, want to keep this guy as his XO? But Colonel Ty goes through a lot in this show. I mean, they all do, right? But
Mm-hmm.
Colonel Ty, in many ways, goes through quite a bit over the course of the series. But in the miniseries, he's really rough around the edges. But I like what happens and the arc that they put him through in the regular series.
Yeah, me too. You These characters, in particular Colonel Ty, feels really real, right? So there's
Yeah,
this um I mean, people are fragile, and everyone has like everyone's got all these deep, deep flaws and faults in them. And this is something where like you've got the XO on the Galactica, and he is a very flawed individual. And not only that, it's like he can't hide it either because everyone kind of knows about it, right?
right.
Everyone knows about his drinking problem. Everyone knows
Well, but
about his like personal
yeah,
problems.
he doesn't even hide it
Yeah,
though. That's the
yeah,
problem. He doesn't hide his drinking problem.
yeah,
He just drinks. He knows everybody knows, and he's like, "Oh,
yeah,
whatever." And then, but that's such a huge vice to him that he just doesn't care.
yeah,
So you're right on that. Yeah, he really struggles with that. Um, but yeah, let's really quickly,
yeah.
just kind of a couple other people that are in here that I think, are probably kind of important. I mean, we could talk about it, several others too, but there's a guy. Now, here's one of my favorite characters from the series, and I really love Chief Petty Officer Galen Tyrrell.
Mm.
He's the kind of the main maintenance guy of the Colonial Vipers and the Raptors in the hangar. Um, uh, People may hate that I say this, but he kind of reminds me a little bit of Chief O'Brien.
I knew you were gonna say that.
You knew I was
Yeah,
gonna say. I
I
know.
knew you
Yeah,
were gonna
you know
say
me a
that.
little.
Yeah.
You know me. You know me too well, Chris. But yeah, he has that same kind of like gritty. He knows his job. He knows his role inside and out. I mean, he has this little fling with Boomer. It's an officer and an enlisted, and that's kind of a no-no, which is why they like run into this other thing, close the door, and
Yeah,
have their way with each other. But he is so good at what he does. And I think he's good at leading the younger folks, right? The younger enlisted folks on the hangar deck. I think that he tends to, and I'm not going to get into the series, but I'm going to kind of reference this piece of it that as you watch his character, for not always, but a lot of times, I feel like he does a good job of getting the best out of his people, right? Like the pushing them to their limits, getting that. I'm a fan of his character. I really like um in this mini series. I really like what they did, and played by an actor named Aaron Douglas, who's fantastic. Really like how he portrayed this character quite a bit and how they wrote the character.
completely agree. Yeah, he's great. He's great. And he really loves and wants to protect his people.
Yeah, he really does. There's another one named Petty Officer Anastasia Duala, or D. She's a
Mm.
communications officer at Battlestar Galactica. Doesn't have a massive role in the miniseries, but I will tell you without giving too much away, her role does get bigger as the series goes on. Same thing with Lieutenant Felix Gaeta. Same
Mm.
thing. He's a tactical
Yeah.
officer. We see him play an important role in calculating jumps for the first time in a long time, and so forth, to get away from the 12 colonies. He plays a bigger role as the series goes on. Played by Alessandro Giuliani. Nikki Klein, who plays Specialist Callie. She's one of the
Yeah.
repair technicians who works with the chief. Also plays a bigger role as the series goes on. And then I how do you pronounce his name? Tahoma Penniket, who
Yeah.
plays Carl Hilo Agathan. Again, bigger role as the series goes on. But he is the guy who gives up his seat on the Raptor when him and Boomer are land, repair the ship, and then take off from Caprica. But yeah, some
Yeah.
really great characters. We didn't cover them all, but we could be here for hours just talking about the characters.
I know.
But let's just kind of somewhat quickly, Chris. I think we should kind of go through the plot of this kind of two-part mini series here and cover. We've talked some about some of it, but maybe just kind of go through and give the listeners and watchers kind of a quick rundown of what happens in the mini series for those who haven't seen it in a long time and need a refresher, or if you haven't seen it, maybe you should have not watched this far if you didn't want to be spoiled. But really, Chris, we just kind of jump into it in the beginning of the miniseries. It talks about how there's been a 40-year armistice between the 12 colonies and the Cylons, because we know there was a Cylon war before this.
Yeah, absolutely. And it starts off, there's been this 40-year armistice, and they have these regular get-togethers where mankind is visiting, mankind visits the station to kind of like maintain relationships. But mankind has been the only one to go. They've never been visited by the Cylons. And so after 40 years, that's when the Cylons come, and then they just blow up the station, like, essentially. But in that I like that the person that's waiting there, like, he's opening some manuals, and you get to see these pictures of the old Cylons from the original Cylon,
Yeah.
from the original Battlestar Galactica. So that was pretty cool. Yeah. Yeah, and the Battlestar Galactica, it's going through, like, they're gonna retire it. It's gonna go through a decommissioning like ceremony, so they're working on that. But in the background, Cylons are working on infiltrating the mainframe through Gaius Baltar, and that's what happens, and that's essentially all of these nuclear destruction Cylon attacks that destroy, like, the 12 colonies, and they put everyone they realize that, and then they go into kind of protective, like, war mode, and are having to protect each other. So these are really, like, giant highlights, but they've got to they take the Battlestar Galactica to that. I don't know if it's a nebula, but it is a station on Ragnar, and they kind of regroup there, get some ammunition. All of the president dies, and that line of succession dies, and they swear in the new president, um, Laura Roslin, and essentially she's put in this position where she's got to kind of gather up all the survivors, and so
Yeah, she was
yeah.
43rd in line of succession.
Oh,
That's
43rd.
crazy. Yeah. 42 other people had to die for her to become president, which is crazy.
Oh
But you're
goodness.
right. You look at it, right? And so the military and civilian mindset in this case, right? And she hasn't been in a really, really high civilian political position. So she doesn't really have the right mindset that the president of the 12 colonies would have, right? So
Yeah.
you have Adam on one side who says, "Hey, we're gonna jump. We got to get out of here, right? We got to get as far away from this as we can and regroup." She's like, "Nope. We gotta bring as many ships together as we can. Kind of form like a convoy of ships. We can't leave people who are in ships that don't have that faster than light jump capability. We can't just strand them. We've got to get them off. We got to, you know." And he's like, "Nope. We're out of here. We're leaving." And it's a very different mindset. Um, I think it's great for the show because you have somebody who greatly cares that every single person matters.
Hmm.
And Adama is thinking more of long-term survival of the human race of their species. In
Yeah.
fact, I even think Lee Adama even mentions that at some point. So it's really really critical, and that Ragnar station is important because they have to resupply, weapons. They've got to
Yeah.
get ammunition and weapons because Battlestar Galactica was like partly a museum. They were like I said, they were
Yeah.
getting ready to decommission her. They had like a museum and part of the flight deck, I think, or something like that. I mean, it wasn't in the position to like go into war. And as this miniseries goes on, you start to hear reports about all these other battle stars being taken out because they're more advanced and they have all the integrated computer systems and everything else, which the basically the equivalent of malware that is introduced by the Cylons into the computer network wreaks havoc, and the new battle stars, the new Vipers, all those things go completely silent, and that they are affected significantly by this malware.
Yeah, absolutely. You made a great point earlier about the president, right? Like she's a caregiver. She wants to save everyone. She wants to build this convoy. She doesn't have the military mindset. She doesn't want to sacrifice anybody. But then later on in the miniseries, she has to make this decision. The convoy's there, and they're getting ambushed, or there's the silent attack that's coming, and
Yeah,
there's a bunch of ships, and then some of the ships don't have a faster than light drive, and they can't do anything about that because there's like either they got to take everyone that can leave with a faster than light drive, because if they don't leave, then everybody's gonna die, and then she gives that order, and you just see her sitting there, and then that completely flipped it, right? Because earlier she was like, I'm Stan, I gotta save these people, there's a whole bunch of people, we gotta help them. And then she realizes, oh, I'm in this circumstance, it's a no-win circumstance, and then if we don't leave, like everybody's gonna die, the entire race dies there because there's only like 50,000 people. So
yeah.
I like that they completely flipped that, and then she had to be responsible for that decision.
Yeah, what made it even more difficult was earlier when she's on board that ship that looks kind of like a greenhouse or
Oh
whatever.
yeah, yeah.
And there's that little girl on the bench, and she's talking about how she's going to meet up with her parents, but her
Yeah,
parents have already died on whatever one of the planets have happened,
yeah.
one of the 12 colonies. And she's like, I'm going to meet up with them and I'm going to bedtime story and blah, blah. And that little girl was left on board one of those ships that couldn't jump. And it's so they show the little girl right as the ships are jumping away, right in the glass you can see the ship jumping away, and then it cuts back to Laura Rosalind and the don't leave us, and you see her face, and it makes me think she probably was thinking a lot about that little girl that she had just visited not long ago being left behind. This show, in my opinion, this show is not for the faint of heart. There are a lot of very, very difficult situations and that come up in this series. And in the miniseries, you see it right away, right? You see a lot of tough decisions. You see people dying, things like that. There's stuff that happens in the show that doesn't normally happen in sci-fi shows and things like that, because a lot of times people want the happy ending. But I don't know if you felt this way, Chris, but if you compare it to like the next generation of Star Trek, for example, right, where Ron D. Moore got his start, 99.99% of the time, the ending of an episode of Next Gen was a happy ending. Now that was different because it was episodic versus this is serial. You know, this is the continual story, right? Um, but Next Gen almost always a happy, in most of Star Trek's almost always a happy ending. Have you noticed so far, and you can see it in the miniseries and probably what you've watched so far, have you noticed that there's a lot of episodes that do not end happy in any way, shape, or form? In fact, they end, you're like, oh my gosh, this ended like it ended like that. Like, oh, and it's just, you're like, you're wanting some type of happy ending and it's just not there.
I totally felt that. I mean, with the little girl on the station or on that ship, and you knew she was gonna perish, I felt like,
Yeah.
oh, did they go there? Did they really go there?
Yeah.
And
They
yeah,
did in the mini series right
you
away.
know, they really went there.
Yeah. Yep. There's some
Yeah.
there's a lot of really, and you've already seen some of this from what you've watched. There's a lot of really hard scenes and moments in the show, both in the
They,
mini series and then in the series itself.
yeah. They really go with the effect of decision making, right?
Yes.
So, I mean, in the series, like not to get too far down the series, but in the series, there's this there's decisions that they do, and they play out like, okay, what was the effect? Um, and the decision may have been like based on, um, it was like really interesting. You might have had like one decision that may have been kind of, yeah, you really, this is kind of a wrong decision to do, but this will give you a better outcome. Or no, this decision is the right decision to make, but the outcome's going to be worse. And I love seeing those episodes, and we can talk about those in future episodes that we do, but it's like, oh, they make the right ethical decision, and then it plays out like it plays out. And like everyone has to live with it, right? There's some terrible things that happen because they make the right decision, and they do it, and it's an ethical decision, it's a moral one, and they know like what the effect is going to be, but they're like, hey, if you don't make an ethical decision here, everything else crumbles.
Yeah.
And so they make an ethical decision, and then they live with the aftermath, and there's terrible things that happen.
And there's a lot of times too, Chris, where people make decisions that are very unethical
Yeah.
and they have to live with it, and you see the ramifications and the fallout of that. I feel like from what I can remember, there was some significant amount of that in season 2 of the series. But
Yeah.
even just in the mini series, you see that as well, right? With some of those decisions.
Yeah.
Um, kind of in that regards, there, as we're moving through this part 1 of the mini series, there's a moment where the Raptor, which is being flown by Boomer, Sharon Valeri, who we learn at the end of the miniseries is one of the Cylons. Of course, she doesn't know that.
Yeah.
Uh, they land on Caprica to make some repairs to the Raptor, which is kind of like a transport ship. It's not doesn't transport a lot, but it's more like a transport ship slash scout ship, right? They will send it out, do some recon, jump back to the fleet, and then report on that, right? But it can carry a few people. So they land, and then there's a bunch of survivors that have evacuated from somewhere nearby, and they want to, of course, get on board the Raptor, and they say nope, we don't have enough room, and then finally they say okay, we're going to do a lottery, but only I think women and children or something like that um, are allowed. Where they're going to take. They do the lottery. Some people come on. Gaius Baltar thinks about switching his numbers. In fact, he does. He switches his numbers with this lady whose number's been called, and she's like, "I can't read it. What's my number say? What's my number say?" Then it's like the guilt kicks in,
Mm-hmm.
and he decides that he's gonna, yeah, this lady's got the winning number instead of saving himself, right?
Yeah.
But then he's recognized, and they say, "Hey, we got to take this guy with us." Um, and so in that scene, The right decision, I think, would have just been to repair their ship and leave. But they take on some additional people.
Ah,
Because of that, Hilo decides to remain behind, giving up
yeah,
his seat so that Baltar can go on
yeah,
because he believes he's that important as this scientific genius, which he's been all over the news. So why wouldn't Hilo believe that? And that, right in and of itself, is a significant decision that I don't necessarily think might have been the right one. Of course, we as an audience know Baltar's sleazy at this point,
yeah,
but it has significant ramifications. And of course, Boomer is super upset because her and Hilo are friends.
yeah,
And so you see that right away in this miniseries, and then you see the fallout of that, right? Like what would
yeah,
have happened if they hadn't taken Baltar and he died on Caprica? There'd have been a lot of things that happened later on in the series. You're like, well, that wouldn't have happened if Baltar had been dead or whatever, right?
mm-hmm.
But it's that same kind of idea, like you said, Chris, the making the decision and then whether it's a right or wrong decision, having to live with that, and that then kind of takes us into what they would kind of consider as part two of the miniseries.
Yeah, that's right. That's great, great like insight you had. You know, and that reminds me there's a line that Adama speaks, and I don't remember if it was in the miniseries or one of the seasons, but it's an interaction between Lee and Bill Adama, and and Lee had to do something on leadership, and Bill Adama is like, well, now you're a leader and you got to live with it, and that's what being a leader is about. So Adama says something like that
That's during the
uh,
season, I think.
during the
Yeah,
season. Yeah,
we can talk about that after, whatever, but that I think that's in season three, season two, something like that. But yes,
yeah,
that's a really, really great line as he's trying to. It's interesting, right? Because as the show goes on in the mini series and even in the regular series, Commander Adama is torn between, well, maybe torn's not the right word. He's balancing the idea of being a father,
mm-hmm.
right?
Mm-hmm.
As well as being a mentor from a military perspective, right? From a ranking officer to a younger ranking officer. And he's having to balance both of those of helping to teach his son how to be a great leader, military leader, and be his father. And I
Mm-hmm.
think that has to be so difficult on Commander Adama.
Absolutely. Absolutely has to be so difficult. Hmm. Yeah, interesting. Yeah, so the second part of the miniseries, I know there's a lot. I think they are at Ragnar. You know, they're filling up the I guess all of the ammunition of the Battlestar. And they're having to get out of Ragnar. I think they eventually do get out of Ragnar. Um,
Yeah, and they jump.
they jump and they avoid like the Cylon attacks because I think there's a bunch of Cylons like outside of the nebula waiting for them, something like that.
Yeah, it's like they come out and then they jump away
Mm,
to try and escape. But unfortunately, those ships that didn't have the FTL, as we mentioned, are left behind, and the Cylons launch an attack and destroy the rest of those ships. Um, and as we said before, that has to weigh. And I think really, even as you go in the series without giving too much away, I think that weighs on Rosalind for the whole rest of the show. Just
oh
that
yeah,
idea that she couldn't save as many as she would have liked to.
yeah,
And you see that at the very end of the miniseries with something we can talk about too. But yeah,
yeah, yeah, absolutely. You know, and she's got the writing on that whiteboard behind her. How many people are alive? And you kind of see that like fluctuate. Like I think it's 50,000 or 49,000, and she kind of adjusts that like as she talks to Billy, like how many people survived, Billy, or how many people did we lose?
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. And in the station, Commander Adama gets caught in that. I don't know. It's like a little room or service room or something like that that guy,
Yeah.
and find out he's some kind of arms dealer, but he's being affected by the radiation that's surrounding Ragnar, and but the humans are immune to it. And then Adama figures out, oh, you're a Cylon, but you look and act like us. And this is where that comes into play. That now at this part in the miniseries, we've learned. Well, we already knew this, but they are learning. The characters are learning, starting with Adama, that oh crap, the Cylons can look like us and act
Yeah.
like us and sound like us and be human. And now this completely changes everything because the Cylons that Adama knew from the first Cylon war were these big robotic, as they call fracking toasters,
Oh yeah,
right?
the toasters. Yeah, yeah.
Which is funny because they start in the miniseries and it goes into the show that they were able to get the F word into a show by changing it from the F word to frack. So that's their F word. And it's very interesting because and then they nickname Cylons toasters, right? Because they're metal and they have a lot of nicknames for the machines. But this is
They
where they
do.
begin to learn, right, that the Cylons are not just these big toasters, that they can look like people.
I think the frack word was like very clever. So I, used the term frack. Then my wife was like looking at me like I'm crazy. Like, what are you doing? Frack, frack, frack. And then so
You're like, I'm cursing in BSG. That's
yeah.
what I'm doing.
That was a clever way to do that. So
Yeah.
it's ironic that, now that they're realizing, oh, the Cylons could be any one of us or look like any one of us, then they realize, oh, we need to somehow devise or get a Cylon detector, and they're turning to Baltar to be able to do that. And so it's ironic that it is Baltar because Baltar already knows, he's known like, oh, okay, yeah, the Cylons look like humans, and now um they're coming to Baltar to say, Baltar, we need your help.
And he's flustered. I mean, when they
Mm-hmm.
ask him to do that, you notice how nervous and how
Mm-hmm.
flustered he is. And it kind of makes me wonder why didn't any other characters go, "Hey man, you all right? Like, well, you seem real edgy." And obviously everybody's on edge because of what just happened, right? The colonies have been surprise attacked. They're on the run and now they Cylons look like humans. But he's even more so. He's like borderline psychopath, like crazy.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like why
Mm-hmm.
wouldn't someone else have asked or maybe I don't know. I just kind of felt like, well, maybe he's just a genius, so this is why he acts this way. But any of the interviews he did before the attacks, when you see at the beginning of the miniseries, he's always very calm, this calm demeanor, this very like, I am incredibly intelligent, but never came across the way he does in this particular moment when they're asking him to devise this plan. I mean, he is really wigged out.
Yeah. He's all sweaty. Yeah,
Right.
that's funny.
He's like an extra in an Eminem song.
It
You
is.
know, palms are sweaty,
Are
knees
you all...
weak,
I
arms are
know,
heavy.
I know, I know.
There's vomit already. Anyway, sorry,
He does, no,
I
no, it's
won't
all
start
good.
rapping.
He does a great job of that. That's great. Yeah. So they're kind of in this, predicament now, like of like where do they go? What do they do? All of the 12 colonies are pretty much like destroyed. Um, and where should they go? And then they realize like Earth is a thing, or Adama and Roslin like talk about that, about Earth. Um, and and Roslyn, she's rightly so kind of skeptical about, hey, is this Earth thing like really a thing? Um, but Adama's, going to use that like as a tool to give people hope. And that's an interesting kind of perspective, like of Adama's character, right? He knows that people have to have hope, in order to continue, in order for him to continue leading, in order for them to keep following. They've got to have hope in a cause, and so that's what he helps give them.
Yeah, and it's interesting too because they haven't jumped in a while, and on top of that, the Cylon fleet's out there. They've got to jump right just outside
Mm-hmm.
the nebula or whatever it is, and they have to calculate coordinates to just jump somewhere kind of unknown, right? and that's a huge leap there. So
Mm-hmm.
they jump, right? We know they're successful. They get away. At least the ships that have the faster than light get away. And Adama announces this, hey, there's this in the text, there's this 13th colony called Earth. And it's a some kind of closely guarded military secret that most people don't know about. And like you said, Rosalind's kind of skeptical, and they talk about Earth, and that it's a myth. But Adama goes in this idea to use an idea for hope, to give the people something to fight for, right? Versus just, hey, we're out here and we're in this hopeless situation. We're just on the run trying to get away from these Cylons. It's, hey, no, we're gonna go find a new home now. They took our home from us. We're gonna go find a new home. We're gonna escape and we're gonna go start over. And towards the very end, the very last couple moments of the miniseries, Adama gets back to his quarters and finds this note. And in the note, it says there are only 12 Cylon models. So
Yeah.
we learn who the first six Cylons are, right? We learn that you see this group back on Ragnar. This big door opens up right as the Cylons show up, and it consists of a bunch of copies of Number Six, who is Trisha Helfer's character, the one that Guy Spaltar
Yeah.
originally sleeps with and then has sees in his head. You have Lebanon, I think is how you say the guy's name.
Or Leo. Yeah. Leo Ben. Maybe. Yeah.
Yeah, Leoben. So he's the guy that is the posing as a human arms dealer that Adama gets trapped with there for a little while on the station. You have Dural, who we didn't really talk about, but he's like he's one of the media reporters that was on
Mm-hmm.
board Galactica that doesn't believe he's one. Um, so we have a few, and then of course it also reveals Sharon Valeri, aka Boomer, as another one of the Cylon models. So we do get that. We get the first few anyways. Saying, hey, these are the first few Cylons that we know of, but not necessarily all the characters know. Um, and that's really interesting way to end the miniseries, right? To just here you go. Here's a few of the models of the 12 that they're saying there are.
Yeah. Yeah. That was great. 12 models, 12 colonies, 12 signs of the zodiac, like the 12 gods, like amongst them. I think I'm getting
Yeah.
all those numbers right.
Yeah, and so
Um,
if you're a human, if you're a human in the 12 colonies, the 12 tribes of Kobol, they believe in polytheism, right? They believe in multiple gods because you hear them say, "Oh, may the gods be with us," or the gods this or gods that throughout the miniseries. But then you hear the way that the number six, played by Trisha Helfer, her character talking about how it's God's will, not multiple gods. So now you have the Cylons who believe in a single god, and you have the 12 colonies, the humans who believe in multiple gods and polytheism. And you see that begin in the miniseries, and it will play out through the rest of the regular series of Battlestar. And that's that one of many underlying religious themes that you will see throughout Battlestar Galactica, um, that I wrote about in a paper in college. So
yeah, I think that's absolutely fantastic that you wrote about that. I think there's so many layers like in here, and I think it's wonderful. There's almost a sense of innocence or wonderment in Six's character, in Trisha's character, because she is
yes,
talking
like a
about
child.
like a
Yeah.
child.
Yep.
She is talking about God singular. Adama says things throughout the miniseries where he says, like, yeah, we created them, right? We created the Cylons. Mankind created the Cylons. Trisha's character as a Cylon and her relationship with Baltar, she asks Baltar, she's searching for this connection with him. Do you love me, Gaius? Like, do you love me?
Yeah.
And she's searching for that connection with humankind, like the Cylon's creator, um, which is just fascinating and wonderful because they don't know like this. they don't know what the love of humanity feels like, and they're searching for that. They don't know what the creation of life in terms of like a baby is, because like we've got at that happens at the beginning, right at the beginning of the miniseries. Like six has this interaction with a baby. She's like, oh, it's so fragile. It's amazing that the neck can hold up like the head, and she wants to hold the baby, and like
And
and
she
then
barely
she
touches it, and then
and
it
yeah.
kills it. Yeah.
So there's this like sense of wonderment, of obviously they want to be, and I haven't finished the series, but this is how I feel. Obviously they want to be, and they're yearning to be human, because they've modified themselves to appear human. They are interacting with the humans so that they can find love. um and they want to have to be able to procreate and to have babies. So so I thought, that was fascinating in of itself. And then Trisha's Six's use of it's God's will, and she uses that like over and over and over again with Gaius. You're part of God's plan, Gaius. This is
Yeah.
God's will, Gaius. Have faith, Gaius, and like using that term of faith like a lot. And then Adama at the end of the miniseries using the idea of Earth, because they're skeptical that that even like exists, right? But he's using that as a foundation for hope, saying we want to go search for this Earth thing because that's going to give us hope. Whether or not Earth actually exists, like we don't know. Like whether and that's so steeped in like this the mythos of like having like all of these gods or all of these various like religions, right? So you might go into these realms of faith where you go, then it just becomes about faith. Whether it's true or not, you don't know, but then you have to apply faith to believe that it's something that you can work to and strive for. So I thought, oh yeah, that was fascinating. And Adama's speech, like in the middle of the show, like the his decommissioning speech, which I loved, because he goes like ad hoc, and he goes, well, we have to remember the war against the Cylons. We were fighting for survival. And he goes off, he stops, and he kind of goes off of his prepared speech, and he talks about, but are we worthy of being saved, or are we worthy of surviving like as a species, right? He's wondering that in his mind, are we worthy of surviving?
Yeah.
Because so he's a veteran of wars, so he's familiar with all of the tragedies and the travesties and the terrible occurrences of war. um and I thought that was a brilliant thing to put in here, because you you you've got all of these characters with deep, deep, deep flaws that are just trying to survive, and you're exploring all these flawed characters in the midst of religious themes, God and gods, and are you worthy of having hope? Are you worthy of surviving? And I just love that as a show, and they're having to make these decisions like that question all of that, and
Right.
you're putting the president in these circumstances where, okay, I'm going to decide, I've got to make this decision, all these other people are going to die, but I've got to save like the rest of us, and what does that make me like as a person? And then you have the Cylons pointing that out all the time. Hey, humans, you guys do this. What makes you as humanity like worth surviving like over us? But because the Cylons know that humanity created them, there's this just yearning for them to kind of connect with humanity. And you see that throughout the show. And it's just very, they don't connect healthily, but the Cylons want to connect with their creator. So I love that. There's
Yeah.
Frank. Yeah.
And there's this the underlying theme of what does the character do in the face of hopelessness? What does the character
Mhm.
do in the face of a potentially no-win situation? Right? Kobayashi Maru. What
Mhm.
what 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 do the characters do? How do they respond? How do they interact? What's their, like you said, are they worth saving? Are they redeemable? Is humanity redeemable? Right? Is there hope You know, can you survive on hope alone? Right? This hope of a 13th colony of Earth, right? Can you survive on that? Can you survive on just the hope of, hey, we're going to try to get here, for example, right? There's a lot of things in this series to unpack in the mini series alone, let alone
Hmm.
the rest of the series, which we haven't even touched. Obviously, we've kind of hinted at some things, but um, as a whole, this mini series, I think for if you want to consider the mini series like a pilot,
Yeah.
this mini series hits hard. It really does. It challenges you. It challenges you to think about the characters. It challenges you to say, okay, if I was put in a situation where everything I've ever known is lost, right? And I'm just trying to survive, what would I do? Do I still stick to my morals, or do I go out and branch out and just do whatever I need to do to survive? It kind of reminds me a little bit of Star Trek Voyager in that sense, right? We talked about it with Janeway, right? Well,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
she's so stuck on her Federation morals and everything that she has such a hard time being able to be flexible and not hold everybody to those Starfleet codes and conducts, even though they're not all Starfleet. And then she eventually changes to this more of the idea of I've got to do whatever I got to do to get my crew home. The same kind of principle applies here. They're stuck in this situation where it's just everything seems hopeless and all is lost. And do they stick to their morals, or do they do things that maybe are immoral or unethical or just downright awful in order to survive?
Hmm.
You'll
Hmm.
have to watch the rest of the series to find out. We
Yeah,
don't want to spoil it
yeah,
for those of you who
absolutely.
haven't seen it, but it's very much worth it. If you've never watched this before and now you've been spoiled by our episode, we now challenge you to go back and watch the miniseries and decide for yourself and say, hey, yeah, this was fantastic. Now I got to go watch the series, or you know, I watched it. I'm not really a huge fan or whatever. Up to you, but I really do think that this reimagined refresh of, because I haven't seen much of the original, Battlestar Galactica is, to me, one of the best science fiction series in the last 50 years.
Yeah, this is terrific. There are so many later layers in the series. We'll get into the series later, but so many dilemmas in the series and what they explore in there are very deep. And we talked about
Yeah.
AI before, right? And AI coming, and this is essentially like, if you think about the Cylons as AI, because they're artificial intelligence, it's something like we created, and they came back, and this is what happens when AI just goes bad, goes bad for humanity. So, um, yeah, this is
Yeah,
excellent, man.
it really is.
Hmm.
I thoroughly enjoy discussing Battlestar with you. The miniseries is great. Before we did this, I went back and like watched the miniseries, and I was just like, because I haven't watched Battlestar in a long time. It's been a while since
Yeah.
I've really sat down and watched Battlestar. And so going back to the beginning and watching the miniseries, it's so good. And now I've actually started to watch the series again.
Okay.
I'm only like two
Yeah.
episodes in, so
Yeah.
nothing crazy. But my plan is to eventually watch through the whole series. I want to. I need to pick it. I need to start watching it more consistently, maybe like one episode a night, because I would love to get through most or all of it before I go to Chicago at the end of October, just to refresh myself prior to going out there. I mean, I've seen it one and a half times through, because I started watching my wife, and she got to season 3 and didn't really like the direction of some of the stuff, so she just stopped
Mm.
watching. I'm like, come on, you got to finish the show, but she didn't finish the show. I don't understand why, but so I've watched it like one and a half times through, or maybe
Yeah.
no, maybe two and a no, maybe two and a half times through. I watched it the first time all the way through, the very first time I ever watched it. Then I watched it through a second time, and then I think the third time was with watched it with my wife, like so two and a half times. So this would be my third full time through.
Outstanding.
But yeah, this is
Outstanding.
great. It feels really good to get back into this after a much longer break, I think, than we were hoping for.
Yeah.
But it's been great talking about something again, like anything really, because we just haven't had the opportunity to talk about the stuff that we love and enjoy so much. So, as always, it's just wonderful doing this with you.
Yeah, this is wonderful. It's outstanding. And we hope like those of you that have been patiently waiting, thank you for sticking with us, and we're hoping you're enjoying Battlestar Galactica discussion that we're having. And yeah, this is just excellent, Zach.
And as soon as I confirm a date, I do have another guest lined up for us coming soon. I would consider him and many others, including those within the circle, I would call it circle, consider him part of Star Trek royalty.
Mm.
He is, um, yeah, he's revered by many people like Denise and Mike Okuda, Doug Drexler, all these people. He's revered by them and others as part of that royalty. So we can't wait to have none other than John Eves on with us. It's going to be
Oh,
absolutely fantastic.
oh,
Um,
yeah.
yeah, so I've got to text him and get a time and date lined up, but I'll get on that hopefully soon. I know he's been busy. But yeah, looking forward to having him on. Really excited about that. We're gonna learn a lot from him too. But yeah, looking forward to that. And we have much more to come. I know, Chris, you and I got to do a little bit of planning together on our next set of episodes, and I think we have some ideas. We'll throw some spotlight stuff in there and other things, but we got a lot of great stuff coming, and we can't wait to share that all with you.
Yeah, it's gonna be absolutely amazing. So say we all. I had to throw
Hey,
that in
yes,
there.
I forgot to say that the at the end of it, I can't believe I didn't think of that. But yes, the end of that speech when Adama says, "So say we all," and he gets everybody to say it. I mean,
Yeah,
"So say we all" is like the phrase other than frack, I guess,
yeah.
from the new Battlestar. Like that's a big deal. How can we? Thank you for saying that, Chris. We almost left that out. We might have had to shut this whole thing down had we left that out. My goodness gracious.
Yeah, we
So
brought
yeah,
it
it was
in, man.
wonderful. So say we all, my friends. So say we all. So yes, thank you as always so much for watching and listening all over the globes and the interwebs. We very do much appreciate it. Be sure to check us out on Facebook and Instagram and YouTube if you're listening to us, to follow us there, subscribe, hit the like, thumbs up, whatever the button is, for all of our latest announcements, celebrity guest interview announcements, and much more. That's the best place you can find us: Instagram, Facebook, YouTube, and wherever you get your podcasts. And you can also email us too. Our email address, I believe, is on both Instagram and Facebook. If you ever need to shoot us a message, feel free to. Um, yeah, be great.
Awesome, man. Most excellent.
Yeah. So thank you everybody so much. Take care, and we'll catch you next time right here on the Random Redshirt podcast.